And welcome back into the Big Hit, ladies and gentlemen. Our final segment in here before my man Willie G makes an appearance once again. We're going to talk some IUP football in the Crimson Huddle, and we've got some veteran analysts here to talk IUP football. Malusi Kitchen, Vaughn, Dalzell, guys. Welcome back, Malusi. I know it's been a while, but we're here now, and that's all that matters.
Absolutely.
Okay. We'll talk some IUP football here and talk about IUP's first win of the season, 38-13 over Lock Haven. Boy, it wasn't great in the first half of play, but Crimson Hawks made some adjustments, come out with their first win. But my question to you is, was this a must-win for the Crimson Hawks?
Oh, absolutely, and especially with the game they had last week, letting up 28 second-half points in the week before. I think if you're IUP, you had to win this game, and I think they came out, they responded very well. They took advantage of their opportunities, which I thought was great. Offense, they got their offense going. The defense, I thought, held strong throughout the second half. Because a loss like that from the previous week, you can't have that. That's just unacceptable for any team. So I think they did a great job of responding to all the pressure and criticism that they had this past week and came out with a resounding win.
Yeah, I agree. You never want to start a season off 0-2, especially when you let the one from last week slip away with the two missed extra points and everything. But the quarterbacks didn't play as well as we hoped they would, but the running game was very strong for the Crimson Hawks, totaling almost 400 total yards of rushing just from the game. Drew Williams had himself a day. The defense played very well. We'll talk about Dorian Lane later on in the segment. But there's playmakers all over the field for IUP, and you never want to go down 0-2 and lose to a team inside your conference. So very big one for IUP, and hopefully they keep it rolling for the next week.
Yeah, the Crimson Hawks really slowed the game down against Lock Haven, and they did it through running the football because 8 players had a rushing attempt for IUP, and leading the charge was one of the best stories of the year in Drew Harris, who had 17 carries and 109 yards. Drew Harris, of course, a guy who blew his knee out in high school, a 4-star recruit committed to Virginia Tech, transferred to UMass, and finally end up at IUP, shook off the rust, first 100-yard game of his career. Last week it was Chris Temple, and last year it was Luigi Listabrinza. So IUP, of course, with a stable of running backs, and we have to think they're going to use that running back by committee strategy for the rest of the season. But in your opinion, who will take over as the lead guy for IUP moving forward?
I really think it's a toss-up. I don't think you can really separate the two because no one's really had a decisive performance. It was Chris Temple the first week. It was Drew Harris this week. I think it fluctuates between, like you said, the best thing is just keep that running back system. I personally think it's an in-game decision, who's really, finding their lanes and being able to get up the field. I think that's really the best decision that they can go with instead of just choosing one guy. Because Luigi Listabrinza was the guy last year, but he didn't really have an explosive game this past week. I think he had like 84 yards. So not really too much impressive, finding the lanes and stuff like that. But I think if they just stick with that system of keeping their running backs in committee, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, we're pretty much in agreement here. I think that if you have more than one running back that can run the football, you should use that as much as possible. If you have 2 or 3 guys that can run and get you 50 yards a game, then you got to do that because it's going to wear a defense down. You have different guys that run different sorts of ways. If you guy could run right through the hole and get that tough yardage, then you need that. If you have a guy could bounce it outside or run zone reads and things like that, you can. Even the quarterbacks we saw are a little mobile. And when you have that really helps out on certain situations. Even short yard situations, the Crimson Hawks did very well. They did pretty well on the third down conversions. And if you have a quarterback that can run also, that adds another dimension to the team. So the Crimson Hawks, if you can have as many guys that can run the football and wear a team down as they do, that's what you should focus on.
Yeah, certainly a lot of different weapons that IUP has at their disposal and a lot of things that an opposing defense would have to prepare for in a given week in practice. They have to devote time to saying, okay, there's these guys who can run the football. They all are different. And I think you're kind of right, Malusi. It's almost who has the hot hand, so to speak, and who's seen the field well and running correctly in whatever game. We saw it was Chris Temple. He was hurt, so someone else had to step in. Drew Harris certainly was able to provide that spark. 4 players had rushing touchdowns for IUP. We'll talk about one of them right now and talk about the quarterbacks as well, because Lenny Williams did have a rushing touchdown. He and Chase Haslett both played in the game and put up similar numbers from the quarterback position once again, and Coach Signetti says they're just going to keep on rolling with it here. Williams, 65 yards and had a couple design quarterback runs for him, had a nice run on the read option and that touchdown that I mentioned. So you look at these two quarterbacks, they've put up very similar numbers in the passing game. So do you think that Lenny Williams' running abilities sets him apart from Chase Hazlitt as far as making him the starter for this team?
I mean, I think it does. I mean, I think having that ability to run definitely keeps the defense on their toes. I mean, we've seen it in the NFL with Russell Wilson, RG3 in his first year, and even Andrew Luck, who can get out the pocket, sturdy guy. Ben Roethlisberger's been doing that for years. I mean, he can run when he wants to. So I think it definitely gives your team an edge with running the football and keeping the defense on its toes. Now, do I think Coach Cignetti is going to go with Lenny Williams as a starter? I don't think so, because I think he's going to still do the quarterback series switching. But if I was him, I would stick with Lenny Williams because I think he gives you more upside. I think he's a little bit more accurate with his passes, and I also think he reads defenses a little bit better than Chase Hazlitt. He can pick things up a little bit more quickly. But we'll see how that plays out against Mercyhurst this Saturday.
Yeah, I think the Crimson Hawks will still go with Hazlitt as quarterback, but I think Williams does add that different dynamic type of, because you said all the runners that can run the NFL, there's a lot of running. When you have such a good running game that the Crimson Hawks have right now, that opens up the play action, and that opens up the quarterback to run also. So when you have that, teams are going to start respecting the Crimson Hawks more because their offensive line is playing so well, letting those running backs get lanes to get open, so that Lenny Williams can even roll out to the sides, and he has a lot of receivers. Walt McGeese is a pretty good receiver for the Crimson Hawks. You can get outside and do different things with him. So I think eventually he will be the quarterback that the Crimson Hawks want, but right now I think Hazlitt will be that quarterback because he has more experience for the Crimson Hawks.
Yeah, and absolutely. We're going to switch our focus over to the defense, who was touted, of course, as one of the best in the PSAC. There's certainly some issues and some flaws with the defense, but one thing they are doing, especially better than last year, is taking the ball away. And when they're taking the ball away, they're making it count. 2 pick sixes in as many games. This time it was Dorian Lane, Male Athlete of the Week honors at IUP, for his 19-yard interception return for a touchdown. He also had 7 tackles and a tackle for loss from his linebacker spot. And boy, Dorian Lane was smiling like a butcher's dog on the way down to the end zone. He was all fired up. How important are his abilities and leadership to this team? Dorian Lane, a guy who's been there and done that, part of a conference championship with the Crimson Hawks.
I mean, I think it's huge. I mean, a great player, and Ray Lewis once said, greatness is a lot of small things done well, and he does the small things very, very well. He communicates with his teammates. He lets them know what assignment, and he leads by example. Talk about a guy who has been through it all, ups and downs, and he seems to come through for his team every time, and I think he showed that this past Saturday. And I think the experience of being a senior, you know, like I said, being through the ups and downs definitely helps him keep this young defensive group in line and in check, you know, not get rattled by the pressure of what the outsiders say. You know, they're a team, they focus on what they have to do. And I think Dorian Lane is the perfect example of a guy who leads by example and puts it out on the field.
Yeah, being a great linebacker, being part of that is being a smart linebacker, and that's something he is. Coming out of high school, he was very highly recruited. He was a great player. He ended up going to Duquesne for a year, came here, still did very well for the Crimson Hawks. You see him, if you can run up and plug a hole like he can, you could do well. But he can also drop back in coverage, as you saw. He got the interception, return it for a touchdown, showing his athletic ability. But he's a great linebacker. He can come up through the hole and move side to side and keep his feet next to each other and come up through the hole and plug it. And that's what he's been doing all season and last year. And a guy, as Josh has said, that won a championship with the Crimson Hawks. He knows what he's doing. He leads the team by example, as you said. And I think he has a really great season indoor for him.
Yeah, Dorian Lane and the rest of the IUP Crimson Hawks were able to pick up their first win of the year, 1-1. But time to hit the road for IUP. They've got the Mercyhurst Lakers coming up. It's their homecoming, and I was talking with Coach Cignetti after the game, and he brought up something that was really interesting, and I didn't even think of it. Mercyhurst hasn't lost a game since they lost to IUP last year here at Miller Stadium. They've won about 10 games in a row. They're a team that's absolutely on fire right now. So let's take a look at this road game for IUP, the first one of the year, going to Mercyhurst for their homecoming. Certainly going to be a tremendous challenge for a young IUP Crimson Hawks football team.
Absolutely. I think the biggest key for IUP is to, you know, play within their game. And I think they have a tendency to get out of the game when they go away, or they expect too much that they get a little bit too hyped. But I think against this game, I think they'll be fine. I think this win this past week is definitely going to help them going forward into Mercyhurst. I think the offense looked a lot better. They looked like they knew what they were doing. The running plays looked more, they looked like, it just seemed like they were 1 week of preparation definitely helped them. And the defense looked so much better. You know, they didn't let up in the second half. So I think that the combination of those things, along with the running game, along with Lenny Williams and Chase Hazlitt, I think they're going to be able to provide a great challenge to Mercyhurst Lakers this coming Saturday.
Yeah, I think the Crimson Hawks would have came in, if they would have came into this game 2-0, they would have had a lot more momentum rolling and been better, because they did beat this team by a lot last year, by a wide margin. I believe it was 41-7. And if you can beat a team like that, you remember that game and think that we could do this twice. Now, it's going to be tough. This team, it's a new team. Mercyhurst is a completely different team than last year. As you said, they're on a big winning streak right now. It's their homecoming. They're not going to let any team come into their stadium and beat them on their homecoming. But if IUP can keep the running game up like they have last week, then there's really no reason why this team cannot win. But that's what it's going to count on, really.
Yeah, and to just update the injuries before Saturday, Matthew Moad was able to play in the second half. Jordan Brown should be back. Gabe Ewell should be back at the receiver spot. So IUP looks to have their full complement available to them. They're all in no matter what, and that mantra is certainly going to be put to the test this Saturday against a very good Mercyhurst Lakers squad. Crimson Hawks try to shut down the Lake Show. It's an audio-only broadcast, so be sure to follow IUP Athletics for updates concerning the IUP football team. We're back on the air in 2 weeks' time for homecoming, but that's all the time we have here in the Crimson Huddle. For Vaughn, Dalzell, and Malusi Kitchen, we'll step out, come back, closing the show with the 2-minute drill here on The Big Hit.